Meanwhile, ahead of Nelson Mandela Day, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation collaborated with other civil society groups, calling on the public to share their actions that needed to be taken to fix our democracy. The list of 67 action points are being made public today. To discuss, we're joined by the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Neeshan Balton. He's with us on the line. Mr. Balton, thank you. So the UN chief highlighting things that we deal with that we know all too well in South Africa, like inequality. Tell us what your signs were of a broken democracy in the first place.
For me, the one most glaring example is our last election, where for the first time, more people who were eligible to vote didn't vote compared to the numbers who actually did. And for me, that was the first sign of people disengaging with our democracy and with our electoral system, and pointed to a much more bigger fault line within our democratic project. I think the COVID-19 and our inability to support the poor and the vulnerable within our country in a way that respected their dignity is the second most current glaring example of one of the bigger fault lines in our current democratic project.
Well, Nelson Mandela himself championed social justice, equality. You're talking about these fault lines that are being exposed. Ahmed Kathrada, a champion too for clean governance. I mean, how have we undermined their legacy by still being one of the most unequal countries in the world?
Well, I think that our inequality precedes our democracy. The basis for this equality comes a long way back. But when you also look at the steps in particularly the last decade or decade and a half, the impact of corruption in this country has not only eroded our ability to enforce equality in a much more meaningful way in terms of using state and state resources, but we've also weakened trust in government as a whole. And when that trust gets broken, it has all kinds of ramifications, one of which is a greater disregard for efforts to deal with issues about inequality and poverty in a country like ours.
So you said you'd garner these 67 points. What are some of the ideas that have come through around the theme fixing our democracy?
Firstly, the response has been huge. We had hoped today to release a very comprehensive document detailing all of the submissions, but because of the magnitude of what comes through, we've only managed to release on our various social media pages today snippets of some of the comments. But what's really coming through is what I think is very well known to many in this country. Fundamentally, people have been talking about our electoral system and the need to change that fundamentally so that our votes actually matter not only during but after an election. Strong emphasis on issues of accountability of parliamentarians, but also of government to parliament as a whole and parliament to society more so fundamentally. The issue of corruption has been, I think, is the biggest issue that's come through. And in that are huge calls for remedial measures and harsher sentences and more effective prosecution. But linked to that is the kind of caliber and quality of our public service. I think most people are saying that it is time that we have a public service that has people firstly there who want to serve in the public interest without expectation of undue reward, but also have the necessary skills and expertise to do the job.
All right, so these are ideas, but then there needs to be action, and it seems like we're looking at this confluence of issues. You're talking about public service, gender-based violence, racism, COVID-19, joblessness in South Africa, poverty. What do you say to those who want to be part of the solution, but don't even know where to start?
We've set up across this province, and people have done similar in the Cape and in the Eastern Cape, are community action networks. I think essentially citizens need to start getting involved at a very local level. So start dealing with the issues in your street, demanding accountability from your authorities at the street level, building that up to a community. And thereafter, I think we would be able to tackle many of the bigger things, because that active citizenry must have a base before it is able to tackle many of the major issues. Because once we have that base, we already have a very strong and independent media, a judiciary that has been quite unequivocal in its stance around social justice issues. And together with active citizens, I think we can enforce a range of changes that will deal with the fundamental problems in this country.
All right, thank you for your time tonight. That was the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Neeshan Balton.